We're going to talk about how you change sections and how to get the right stitch gauge so that you are not overpacking your work, especially when you're working on that loopy side. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to punch the wing, the inner part of the wing of this bee. So I've got my next color, and this wing, if I look at the color chart, it's outlined in black. And you could punch the black first, but I have found that whatever you punch last is going to show up best in your project. So since I want that black line to be really nice and bold, I'm going to leave it out for now. And I'm just going to focus on punching these interior sections. So what I'm going to do, I've got the open part of my needle facing where I'm going, and I am going to punch, just start exactly like I did before, but just to the inside of that line, and I'm trying to go about 4 stitches per inch. And when I go up to my next row, you'll really be able to see how I'm leaving a little bit of space in between my stitches and rows. It may be tempting to feel like you need to cover every single bit of monk's cloth, but it's okay to leave a little distance, especially when you are displaying the loopy side. Now, when we're working on the flat side, you might want to pack the stitches a little bit closer, and that's okay because we're not displaying the loop side. So even if it's bulging on the back, it doesn't matter as much. So I am just outlining this. I like to think of it like I have a big fat marker and I'm going around and just moving in so that my marker can cover every part of my drawing. All right, so now I'm ready to turn and come back. And I'm going to try and stagger my stitches in a bricklaying pattern. So instead of entering my fabric directly next to the stitch that came before, I want to try and split the difference. So imagine that your stitches are like you're laying subway tile or bricks. They're kind of staggered. And you can see a little drawing of that in your instructions. And I've got a little bit of distance, a little bit of space between those rows. And if you're worried about it, how it's looking on the front, remember this is super easy to flip over. So I can flip this over and take a peek, and I'm very easily able to see if I'm overpacking. Now this needle is what I call the basic needle. It is a great beginner tool for punch needle. It is not always the best at getting the stitches the loops super even with each other. So if you notice that your loops are looking like they're not all the same height, don't worry because we're gonna fix that in the end. But if you really love punch needle and you want to upgrade your needle, you can do so with it's called a Laver 4mm adjustable needle, which I sell at theurbanacres.com, or an Oxford needle, which I like to call the Rolls Royce of punch needles. It's a little more expensive, but it's really nice. Okay, so now I've gotten about here. Let's see. Okay, so now I see in my work, and it's hard to see because this color is about the same color as my monk's cloth, but I have a little gap in between my rows that is a little bit more than what I intended. So I would actually like to back it up and fix that. So how do I do that? If you make a mistake, all you have to do is pull those stitches out. Now you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that means my punch needle's not working. Not true. Once we get all of the stitches packed in, the tension of the yarn and fabric will keep it together, but it is normal to be able to pull your stitches out. So if you need to, you can. So what I like to do is take the stitches out, back it up, and now I'm just going to kind of scrape the fabric. I'm scraping that weave back into place so it's ready to hold on to my stitches again. And now I am pulling my needle and the yarn back down so that the tip of the needle is back on the fabric, and I can resume, punch that a little closer, and it's like it never even happened. Okay, I've got my last stitch. I don't want to try and travel across any stitches. That's as far as I can go on that side. So I'm holding on to the yarn on the underside, clipping it, and now I can start again. So I'm going to finish up this side of the wing, and then I'm going to switch to the black color and show you how to go in and add a solid line of color. So I finished punching this side of the wing, flip it over, you can see, got my tails here. It's looking really cute. Some of my loops are a little longer in places, and again, that's okay, not a big deal. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch the outline of this wing, and I want to show you a different technique for getting a really straight line of single color or solid color in your project. So normally when we punch, we keep this angled edge facing the direction you're going. Now we're going to do something called stem stitch, which is where you hold the open part or the front part of your needle at a 90-degree angle. So you hold it out to the side instead of where you're punching. So I'm going to punch down here, pull my tail forward, and again, instead of having my needle point this way along the pattern line, it's going to be pointing out like that. And I am going to punch my stitches a little bit closer than I did when I'm doing a fill section. And what this does, it's holding my needle like this, is actually twisting the yarn so that it just stands a lot straighter, so that those lines look really nice and straight. And since this is the perimeter edge of our loops, the rest of this is going to be punched on the flat side. It's going to kind of act like a boundary almost. And I left enough room. Between these two sections that I can fit a row of stitches. So I'm continuing along, and my needle is still spacing out. Going. And I'm punching just a little bit closer than I would for a fill section. Okay. Stop there and do this last little curve right here. Okay. All right, so now flip that over and voila, you can see got a really nice line. Now here, okay, so right here, my stitches got really small. It could have been my yarn, could have been the way that I was holding it. And I'm actually not super happy about the way that looks. this is a great way to show you how to fix something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and this little section right here, it's not the whole thing, it's just a little section. I'm going to pull that out, and let's see, it started, still looked good right there. So I'm going to trim that, and I'm going to repunch it. This is the beauty of punch needle. If you don't like something, you can always change it. And this time I'm really making sure, go all the way down. I'm going to flip over and check. Still looking good. Yep, still looking good. Making sure the weight of that yarn ball is not impeding my yarn. Sometimes it's as simple as that. There. Before I take that out, so much better. Glad I did that. So if you see a mistake, you can take it out and you can change it. I'm gonna clip those. Okay. I'm going to finish punching up all of the loopy sections, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to punch the flat side stitches. It's basically the same, there's a couple little tips and tricks. So meet me in just a minute and I'll show you how to punch the front. I have finished punching all of the loopy sections, and you can see I've got all my tails here on the front. But there is what it looks like on the back. So this is not the final cleanup, because we're going to do a special little iron process at the end. But I am going to just clean up these tails so it is a little less messy here on the front. And now I'm going to start work on the flat stitch side. Get these out of the way. Okay. All right. So you can see that when you punch on the loopy, or just show up the loopy side, the stitches kind of expand. So the berries, even though they weren't traced right next to the wings, they have kind of been pushed right next to the wings. What I'm going to do is just kind of pinch everything back to where it needs to go. And when you're punching, you might need to just kind of move stitches just a little bit so that you can get into where you need to go. So I'm going to start with this lighter green color, which is the stems and half of the leaves. And we're not going to completely abandon our stitch gauge, but we are going to punch the rows a little tighter. So let me flip this over. You can see on the sections that are black, there are a few spots that you can see, and in the gold, you can see the monk's cloth through the fabric, but you can't see it when you flip it over. Since we are showing the flat stitches here, you might opt to punch just a little bit tighter on your rows so that you don't have any of those gaps on the front of your work, since that is what you're going to be displaying. So I'm just going to punch just like I normally would, and I'm going right up next to those loopy stitches. I'm not going into them, but I'm going next to them. And this time, doing the same thing where I pull my yarn tails through to the front. That way I don't have any yarn tails left to pull on this side, or to trim on this side. And I said that backwards. I said I was pulling my yarn tails through to the front. This time you're pulling them through to the back, rather, so that you don't accidentally catch any. Okay. All right, so I'm going to continue punching. Again, just need to move some of those loops out of the way. I'm going next to them, but I am not going into them. Making sure to put some distance. Okay. Let's see. And again, if you mess up, you can just pull that out. So on this side, the trick is we're going more for what it looks like, and since you can see what it looks like as you're punching, you can make adjustments. This is less about getting the right stitch gauge, more about making sure it just looks good. So you might do it a little differently. You might punch a little differently than you would if you were not displaying the flat side. I'm going to continue punching all of my flat side stitches. I'm going to start with the leaves and then the other color for the leaves and then finishing up with the background. You're going to finish that. Remember to pull your tails to the back side so that you don't accidentally unravel anything while you're working. And then in the next section, I'm going to show you how to get this completely finished, ready to go on your walls, ready for display.